It's very important to capture this information, and this is why I'm speaking about this now before it could disappear. And I think that I was surprised at this, and I thought I had to do a quick bit of research and update you about this important article that came from Children's Health Defense. And this is what it was saying on the 6th of October 2025. OSHA admits it told healthcare employers not to report COVID vaccine injuries. So, this is quite a stark headline. And you have to remember that Children's Health Defense, depending on your perspective, could be considered anti vax because it was founded by Robert F. Kennedy. And it was there to challenge the issues around vaccines and I guess to ensure safety. But the minute an article comes from them, much of the mainstream will perceive it as being anti vaccine. I'm trying to be objective here and to look carefully at the details. And so when I saw the article, I went and cross checked this and added my own thoughts from what I have seen. Okay. So let's start. Who is OSHA? And this is who they are: Occupational Safety and Health Administration in the United States. 250 years protecting workers. It's the US Department of Labor. And it's a very important organization. And in every country, you will have a similar kind of organization acting to protect employees from being taken advantage of or their health in the context of the workplace. So it's a very important organization. And as they said here, their role is to mission is to assure America's workers have safe and healthful working conditions free from unlawful retaliation. So they are there about enforcing standards, enforcing anti retaliation provisions. They have federal whistleblower laws, provide support and training, outreach, education, and assistance. So, this is critical and, in effect, should be acting on behalf of the employee to try and make sure that their rights are protected. Okay. So, we then come into the pandemic. The vaccine rollout starts. The decision is taken to mandate vaccines. So the question would be, from the perspective of an employee, which side should OSHA be on? Now, it may depend on their own perspective, meaning that they may perceive that people who don't comply are a risk to other workers. And so, therefore, in order to protect the workforce, they have to act to protect other people who may have chosen not to get vaccinated from doing harm to people who were vaccinated. Wait, let me just think about that a second. Does that make any sense? So, people who were vaccinated would need to be protected against those who weren't. Well, yes, well, that makes perfect sense. Well, let's go into a little bit more detail. So, this here is the frequently asked questions, and this was in place up to at least June 2021, maybe a little bit longer. And it's in the archives. So I had to follow this through to find exactly where this was. And when you look at what it was saying, it then has lots of information as to what it was saying about COVID 19. And so you can see lots of stuff here, but I'm going to zone in on something quite specific with regards to what their perspective was. Um, this is the bit that I said a while ago, and follow along with this. So, what can I do if I believe my employer is not protecting me from exposure to SARS CoV 2, the virus that causes COVID 19 on the job? And so they highlight that under federal law, you are entitled to a safe workplace, and your employer must provide a workplace free of known health and safety hazards. And in this case, it would be COVID-19. If you have concerns, you have the right to speak up about it without fear of retaliation. So, what they're highlighting here is that if a worker feels threatened by the fact that someone is not vaccinated and putting them at risk, say, for instance, somebody who had vulnerabilities, say they're on immunosuppressants or something, or they had chemotherapy and they were concerned about exposure, they would reasonably say, listen, if there was a vaccine that could protect me and other people from passing it on to me, I have a right as an employee to insist on a safe working environment. And so this is where OSHA was coming from in terms of supporting the employee. I guess you can have different views on it depending on your perspective, but let's not argue about that. It's the next bit that I think is very, very concerning. Follow this now. So remember, they've just implemented mandates. They are protecting the rights of the people who are being vaccinated from those who are not vaccinated. And so, what do they do next? Now, this really is very unusual. So, follow on to this decision that they made. Are adverse reactions to the COVID-19 vaccine recordable on the OSHA record keeping log? So then he highlights that, as well as other federal agencies, we are working diligently to encourage COVID-19 vaccinations. They do not wish to have any appearance of discouraging workers from receiving COVID-19 vaccination, and also does not wish to disincentivize employers' vaccination efforts. As a result, they do not intend to enforce 29 CFR 1904's recording requirements to require any employers to record workers' side effects from COVID vaccination. Now, I'm trying to get my head around this, so let's work through it slowly together. So OSHA is acting in the interest of the employee by supporting vaccine mandates and insisting that people who have been vaccinated need to be protected from people who weren't vaccinated, who may be spreading infection, and therefore they need to act to protect them. At the same time, if someone received the COVID vaccine and suffered an adverse event, they don't have to report it. And the reason is because they don't want to disincentivize employers. I'll just think about that. Let's look at that in a little bit more detail, because this is why I said you really have to reflect on what it is that they are saying and doing and where it makes sense and where it doesn't make sense. So here you have, this is the 1904.29 form, and it's a record or reporting occupational injuries and illnesses. And so it has to be done in the context of an employer where you then have to log these injuries. How quickly must you record it? It has to be done within 7 calendar days of the information that an illness, a recordable illness, has occurred. And they go through all kinds of illnesses, including infections, needle stick injuries, all kinds of things. And actually, what would cover in this here is if someone had been mandated to get the influenza vaccine, say, for instance, previously, and they got an injury or a side effect, it should be reported by the employer. But for some reason, when it came to COVID, they did not think that this should be reported. Now, you have to be very careful with regards to what exactly they said. They did not say that employers couldn't report it. What they said is that they did not intend to enforce that 7-day rule of recording requirements for employers. In effect, they don't have to do it. So the question would be, why would the employer do it if they don't have to do it? They would have to have a pretty good reason. So what that then means is that, and this is now important because I keep on coming across people who are saying that side effects are rare because if they were significant, they would be reported and picked up. This is an example of how this kind of injury would have been suppressed because the employee would have nowhere to report it. The employer would not be trying to report it. The whole system would be against the reporting of any adverse effects. And you have to remember, when myocarditis started, it was disinformation. There was not even the consideration initially that it could be true. It was a side effect, and immediately there is no evidence that this is a problem until it was so clear that this was real that they had to acknowledge, okay, this one, but it's really rare. But it's of course rare if nobody's reporting it. This is fundamentally the problem. Now, it is in their archive. I can't tell exactly when they pulled this off, but it certainly was in place and would have given the direction to employers, technically, to ignore COVID vaccine adverse effects, unless they felt very strongly about it. But we don't need you to report it. It's no big deal. Actually, we don't want you to report it because it may disincentivize other people from getting COVID vaccines. That's the mentality that happened there. I have no idea what happened in the pandemic psychologically, but none of this makes any sense because you should want to know if there are adverse effects. And what is frankly unbelievable is that this kind of thinking has now become so embedded that people like me who are asking for autopsies and saying, listen, we got to make sure that there aren't adverse effects. I'm strange. What is going on? We all should be looking to figure out if there could be harm to segments of the population. But there is a cognitive dissonance that has been embedded from all the way at the top, all through the structures in these organizations, and it's only starting to come out. And as I said, credit to Children's Health Defense for finding this out. Apparently, they said it was a whistleblower in the organization who highlighted that this was happening. It says, as it says, does not wish to have the appearance of discouraging workers from receiving COVID-19 vaccination and does not wish to disincentivize employers' vaccination efforts. The responsibility here is to protect the employee, not the employer. And this is the kind of thing that makes no sense in the context of the responsibilities that were there for each organization. Everybody jumped on a bandwagon, and effectively, I think they just believed. They had almost a religious belief that this was going to work. So no matter what we do, it will never come back to be a problem because it would have worked and we would have been proved right and we did the right thing. What a gamble. We are only starting to see the tip of this iceberg. It's not going away, and people like me will keep on bringing it up. I thank anybody who is continuing to do research because there is still a lot to uncover and there's still a lot that needs to be answered to. Ethics, advocacy, and critically the duty of candor should not be avoided no matter how big the organization that is there. Thank you. Remember, like, subscribe, comment, even if it's just to say thank you. It helps the algorithm. And critically, look in the description for our Humming Heroes, the free black and white version. And we want you to support this #1 book by purchasing it on Amazon. So we appreciate all the support, and we look forward to bringing more information in the near future. Have a great evening.
A hero, an immune adventure. Humming Heroes, your lyrical guide to the body's defenders. Now on Amazon. Check the links below.